The letter arrived 11 days after we buried my father. Not from a lawyer, not from a bank. From a man who signed his name only as R. Calloway Rhett, one line beneath the return address, a P.O. box in Victoria, British Columbia. The envelope was plain white, no insignia, no letterhead. Inside was a single index card with 6 words written in careful block print. Come to Victoria, ask for the Ridgeway file. That was it. My father had been a medic with the Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry. He served 2 tours, one in Cyprus in the late 1980s, one in Bosnia in the mid-1990s. He came home from Bosnia quieter than he left. I know this not because he told me, but because his sister, my Aunt Lorraine, mentioned it once when she didn't think I was listening. He never talked about any of it, not once. He retired from the forces in 1998, moved back to Sudbury, Ontario, and spent the next 25 years working at a hardware supply company. Not managing it, working in it. He knew where every bolt and bracket lived on every shelf. His coworkers called him Ray. His customers called him Mr. Sutton. I called him Dad. He died in February, a Tuesday. Heart failure, which the doctor said had been building for years without symptoms. He was 63. He had been shoveling the walk, which he did every snowfall without asking anyone for help. A neighbor found him when she noticed the shovel still sitting upright in the snow at noon. He would never have left a shovel standing in the yard. My brother Marcus called me before the hospital did. You here yet? He said, not hello. Just now, I said. There was a pause. What happens with the house? I held the phone away from my ear for a moment and stared at the ceiling. The funeral was small. My father had requested a military burial at the Veterans section of the Sudbury Cemetery, and the Canadian Armed Forces honored it. There were 7 people present, including the 2 forces personnel who folded the flag. Marcus stood on my left, checking his phone twice during the chaplain's remarks. My Aunt Lorraine stood to my right and wept quietly into a tissue she kept folding and refolding. Afterward, Marcus walked me to my car. Dad have a will? He asked. Filed with a notary in town. I picked up a copy yesterday. And? The house and contents split equally between us. That's it. Marcus exhaled through his nose. That's all there was? I told him yes, because at that point, it was all I knew. The letter from R. Calloway arrived 11 days later. I almost threw it away. It looked like the kind of thing you get from a veterans outreach organization, a form letter with a handwritten touch. But the index card gave me pause. No organization sends an index card. I read it 4 times standing over the kitchen sink, then set it down on the counter and looked at it for a long while. I did not tell Marcus about it. I found the name online that evening. Retired Colonel Robert Calloway, decorated officer, former commanding officer of a peacekeeping unit deployed to the former Yugoslavia in 1994. There was a brief profile on the Regimental Association website. In one of the archived photos, standing second from the left, younger but unmistakable, was my father. I had never seen a photo of my father in uniform before. I booked a flight to Victoria for the following Thursday. My father's house still smelled like him, wood shavings and the particular soap he used, the brand in the green bar that came in a box of 3 from the pharmacy. I went through his things carefully over those 11 days. His closet held pressed shirts, hung at even intervals. His kitchen drawers held receipts sorted by month and clipped together. He had 3 notebooks filled with crossword puzzles from the paper, completed in pencil, every one of them finished. But in the back of his bedroom closet, behind a box of spare lamp parts, I found a locked fireproof case, about the size of a shoebox. I didn't have the combination. I left it where it was and caught my flight. Victoria in March is gray and damp and quietly beautiful. The harbor sits low under cloud, and the older buildings on the waterfront look like they've never been in a hurry. I took a cab from the airport to a cafe near the inner harbor, where Colonel Calloway had agreed to meet me. He was already seated when I arrived. A tall man in his late 70s, straight-backed, wearing a plain gray sweater. He stood when I walked in, which I hadn't expected. "You look like your father," he said. "I've been told that," I said. We sat. He ordered tea. I ordered coffee. He didn't waste time. "Your father asked me to contact you after he passed," he said. "Not immediately." He said, "Give it a week. Let the first part be done before you come looking for the rest." "The rest of what?" He folded his hands on the table. "He left something in Victoria. Has for about 15 years. I want you to understand what it is before I take you there. He told me then about Bosnia. Not the details my father would never give, but the shape of them. He told me that my father had been a medic in a unit stationed near a civilian corridor in 1995, that during a particularly difficult stretch, when supply lines were unreliable and the situation on the ground was what he called managed chaos, my father had made decisions under pressure that saved lives, not just Canadian lives, but local ones. A woman and her 2 children. A teacher from a nearby village. Others my father never named. He told me my father had stayed in contact with some of those families afterward. Quietly. Over decades. Did he ever tell you any of this? The colonel asked. No, I said. He wouldn't have. I looked down at my coffee. Why are you the one telling me? Because he asked me to be, he said simply. I've known him since 1993. When he decided to formalize things, put them on paper, make them official, he asked me to hold the documentation. I'm a solicitor's contact here. There's a firm on Fort Street that has the rest. He slid a card across the table. A Victoria law firm. An appointment had already been made for the following morning. What am I walking into? I asked. The colonel looked at me steadily. Something your father built over a very long time, he said, quietly. That word. I walked back along the harbor afterward. The water was flat and silver. I thought about my father checking his crosswords at the kitchen table, ordering the same pasta at the same restaurant every Friday, leaving exact change in the dish by the door for the newspaper carrier. I thought about him shipping bolts and fasteners at a hardware supply company for 25 years and never once complaining about it. I thought about Marcus on the phone before I'd had a chance to cry. The law firm was on a quiet street. The solicitor, a woman in her 50s named Patricia Osei, met me in a small, clean conference room and offered water before she said anything else. There was a folder on the table. Your father established a trust in 2007, she said. Under British Columbia law, he named you as successor trustee. I've been administering it in that capacity on his behalf since 2019, when he indicated his health was becoming a consideration. He knew that long ago? He was careful, she said. He didn't believe in leaving things undone. She opened the folder. She walked me through the documents at a measured pace, the same way you might explain a road you've driven many times to someone who hasn't. The trust had been funded incrementally over nearly 2 decades. Modest contributions. Consistent. He had used a financial advisor here in Victoria, a man he saw twice a year when he came, for what Marcus and I had always assumed were fishing trips with old Forces friends. They were not fishing trips. The current value of the trust was just over $900,000. I sat back in my chair. Not millions. Not a number that changes the world. But $900,000 built from a hardware supply salary. Over 18 years. Quietly and without a single word to anyone in the family. He declined every opportunity to draw from it for personal use, Patricia said. What is it for? I asked. She turned to a secondary document. He designated it for 2 purposes, she said. The first, ongoing support for a small number of individuals and their families. He has been supporting them for years already through personal transfers. The trust formalizes and continues that support after his death. The families from Bosnia, I said. She didn't confirm or deny. The trust documentation uses general language. The beneficiaries are identified by file number. And the second purpose? She folded her hands. Mental health and emergency support for Canadian veterans and their immediate families. Specifically for those who have not accessed or do not qualify for Veterans Affairs benefits. The gap cases, he called them. I thought of all the times he had said nothing. All the years I thought he was a man without depth because he had no stories, no photographs, no Friday night speeches about duty and sacrifice. He had just been working. Steady, invisible, actual work. And me? I asked. He named me trustee. What does that mean practically? It means you assume oversight and decision-making authority. Disbursements continue per the schedule he established unless you choose to alter or dissolve the trust. Dissolution is within your legal authority. I heard Marcus in that word. Dissolution. My phone buzzed on the table. I turned it over. Marcus. He let it ring. Patricia slid another envelope across the table. He left a letter, she said. He asked that it be given to you in this office, not before. I looked at the envelope for a moment before I picked it up. I didn't open it there. I thanked her, confirmed I would return in the morning to begin the documentation process, and walked out into the gray Victoria afternoon. I sat on a bench near the water and opened the letter. His handwriting was the same as it had always been. Measured, upright, no wasted motion. By the time you read this, he wrote, I'll have run out of time to say it in person, which is probably how it was always going to go. You know me. He wrote that he had not told me while he was alive because he believed money changed the way people listened. He had watched it happen in other families, watched a number become the only thing in the room. He didn't want the trust to become a conversation we had. He wanted it to become something I simply received when I was ready to carry it. He wrote about the families he had helped, not with detail, but with weight. He said there were moments in Bosnia he had never found language for, and he suspected he never would, but those moments had made certain things clear to him in the years that followed. You can't fix what happened, he wrote, but you can decide what you build afterward. He wrote about the veterans he had quietly supported through the trust men he had served with and men he had never met, people who had come back wrong and hadn't found the right door to knock on. He wrote that the Canadian system tried, but had gaps, and that it bothered him when he saw someone fall through one. I'm not a hero, he wrote. Don't make me one. I just had money I wasn't spending, and I knew where it was needed. Near the end, he wrote about Marcus. Your brother is not a bad man. He has always wanted more than he was willing to wait for. I've helped him in the ways I could, but I stopped trying to fix what he had to fix himself. The trust is yours to manage. What you choose to do with the family provision clause is up to you. Don't let guilt make that decision. Don't let resentment either. He ended with 3 words. Steady wins, Claire. I folded the letter and held it with both hands for a while, looking at the harbor. A float plane moved low across the water. Somewhere behind me, a door opened and closed. I called Marcus that evening from my hotel room. Finally, he said, Where are you? Why are you in Victoria? Dad left something. I said, I'm dealing with it. Silence. Then, what do you mean, left something? The will said. The will covered the house, I said. There was a trust he set up separately. In BC. It's legal and properly structured. Another silence, longer. How much? He said. I told him. He exhaled so slowly I almost thought the line had dropped. And you're the trustee, he said. It wasn't quite a question. Yes. So you control it. Yes. I heard something tighten in him. He always did this, Marcus said. He always found a way to make it about you. It's not about me, I said. I have oversight. It's not the same thing. He left you almost $1 million and left me nothing. How is that not about you? It was never personal money, I said. It's structured for specific purposes. Then let me see the documents. In time. Yes. What does that mean? It means I need to understand what I'm looking at before I walk you through it. Come to Sudbury next week. I'll explain everything properly. He hung up before I said goodbye. I didn't sleep easily that night. I lay in the dark hotel room listening to the rain and thought about my father driving to Victoria twice a year, telling us he was fishing with friends. He had probably been fishing, too. That would have been exactly like him, keep the story half true. Waste nothing. I flew back the next afternoon with 2 folders of documentation and my father's letter in my jacket pocket. Marcus arrived at the Sudbury house 4 days later. He didn't knock the way you knock when you're uncertain. He knocked like someone with an appointment. He sat down at the kitchen table and looked at the walls. The way people look at rooms they're calculating. Same house, he said. Same house, I said. I put the folder on the table. I didn't hand it to him. I walked him through it the same way Patricia had walked me through it at a measured pace, without editorializing. He listened without interrupting, which surprised me. He looked at the figures. He looked at the list of designated purposes. Veterans he never even met, he said. And families from his service, I said. Bosnia. Yes, he leaned back. He never told me about Bosnia. He never told me either. That landed between us differently than I expected. Marcus tapped the folder with one finger. The family provision clause, he said. You mentioned that on the phone. He built it in, I said. For immediate family, in case of genuine hardship. It's not a lump sum. It's structured capped annual distributions, tied to accountability. Marcus looked at me directly. Accountability meaning what? Meaning a financial advisor, paid for by the trust. Meaning documented progress toward debt reduction. Meaning it ends if the conditions aren't met, so you'd be overseeing me. The structure would be overseeing you. I'd be administering it. He was quiet for a long time. Outside, a snowplow moved slowly down the street, its amber light sweeping through the kitchen window. He thought of everything, Marcus said finally. It wasn't quite admiration, and wasn't quite bitterness. It was somewhere between. He thought in decades, I said. I used to think that was a flaw, that he was slow, careful to the point of being boring. I thought the same, Marcus said quietly. I was wrong, I said. He looked at the folder again. What if I don't agree to the conditions? Then the family provision goes unused. The rest of the trust continues exactly as he structured it. And you'd be fine with that. I thought about my father's letter. Don't let guilt make that decision. Don't let resentment either. No, I said honestly. But I'd respect it. Marcus stood up and walked to the kitchen window. He looked out at the yard where the snow was still packed hard, the outline of where my father had collapsed still faintly visible near the walk. Maybe I was imagining that. Maybe I wasn't. He loaned me money twice, Marcus said. Significant money. Never once made me feel small about it. I know. But he never trusted me with anything like this. He trusted me to protect it, I said. That's different from favoring me. He turned around. His face was difficult to read. There was something in it I hadn't seen in a long time, or maybe I had never looked for it before. Something that looked like grief that hadn't found its way out yet. He never said he was proud of me, Marcus said. He never said it to me either, I said. But he showed it, in his way. Marcus said nothing. He showed it to a lot of people who weren't even us, I added. That seemed to reach something. Marcus pulled the folder toward himself and looked at the numbers again for a long moment. Then he closed it and set it carefully back on the table. I want to see the formal conditions in writing, he said, before I agree to anything. That's completely fair, I said. I'll have Patricia draft them. He nodded slowly. He picked up his jacket from the back of the chair. At the door, he paused. Did he actually go fishing? He asked. I think so, I said. He probably just also met with a solicitor while he was there. Marcus made a sound that was almost a laugh. He left without the door slamming. That was something. I stood alone in the kitchen for a while. I opened the locked fireproof case that same evening. I had found the combination written on the back of a crossword puzzle clue in his second notebook, 3 digits, the year I was born. Inside were 3 things. His discharge papers from the Canadian Forces, a photograph of 5 men standing outside a building I didn't recognize in winter light, and a folded note on plain paper. The roots hold even when you can't see them. That was all. 6 weeks later, Marcus signed the structured support agreement. He met with the financial advisor on a Wednesday afternoon and called me that evening to say it had gone better than he expected. She didn't make me feel stupid, he said, which I understood to mean a great deal coming from him. The trust continued distributing per my father's schedule. In the first quarter, a veteran in Thunder Bay received emergency funding that covered 3 months of rental arrears while he waited on a delayed Veterans Affairs decision. A woman in Halifax, the daughter of one of my father's former colleagues, had her student loan payments covered for a semester while her mother was hospitalized. Quiet transactions, no announcements, no recipients who knew the name behind the fund. Because the trust documentation had been written that way on purpose, my father had called the fund the Ridgeway Trust. Ridgeway was the street in Sudbury where he grew up, where his own father had worked 2 jobs for 30 years without complaint, and never once asked anyone to notice. I had walked down that street 100 times growing up without understanding what it meant to him. The following October, Marcus drove down to Sudbury for the first time in years without a specific reason. He just showed up. We had dinner at the same Italian place my father had gone every Friday. Marcus ordered the same pasta my father always ordered. I don't think he realized he'd done it until halfway through the meal. Did you know he came here every week? I asked. He told me once, Marcus said. I thought it was boring. He liked knowing what to expect. I used to think that was a weakness, Marcus said. We both left that sentence alone for a while. On the drive back to the house, Marcus looked out the window at the streets going dark in the October evening. I've been thinking about what he actually left, he said. Not the trust. Just him. What do you mean? I mean, I spent 15 years thinking he was small. Quiet job, quiet life, same restaurant, same crossword, same green soap. He paused. Turns out he was just doing everything in a direction I couldn't see. I didn't say anything. There wasn't much to add to that. I want to contribute, he said after a moment, to the trust. Nothing huge. Whatever I can manage once the debt is cleared. I want to put something in. I looked at him. He was staring straight ahead, and his jaw was set in the way that meant he was serious, and a little embarrassed about being serious. Dad would have something low-key to say about that, I said. Yeah, Marcus said. He'd say it didn't need to be announced. Exactly. We drove the rest of the way without talking, which felt easier than it had in years. I still have the index card from Colonel Calloway's letter. It sits on my desk beside my laptop, next to the photograph from the fireproof case. The 5 men standing in winter light outside a building I still haven't identified. My father is second from the right. He looks young and tired and completely present, in the way that people look when they are doing something real. I used to think strength announced itself. Rank, salary, the right car, the louder argument. My father never had any of that, and I misread it for half my life. He wasn't small. He was building something in a direction I couldn't see. The roots hold even when you can't see them. If there is someone in your life who has lived quietly, who fixed things and showed up and never made a production of it, this is worth saying out loud. Not everything that matters makes noise. Sometimes the people building the most are the ones you walk past without looking up. If that landed somewhere for you today, stay with this channel. Share what steady has meant in your life. Because I am still learning what my father left me, and I don't think I'll be finished for a long time.